Blonde for a Day from 1946 sees a return of Hugh Beaumont as the character Michael Shayne, private investigator. In this, his third outing as the detective character. And this was another low budget PRC film, and it was a brisk watch at about an hour. And I enjoyed seeing Beaumont return to this role again. So I'll give a review with a summary of the plot, spoiler free, and then offer some closing thoughts. Well, the film opens up with Los Angeles newspaper reporter Tim Rourke, played by Paul Breyer, and he's tracking down a story about the murder of three gamblers, and he is openly critical of the local police, saying that they just aren't doing their job, namely a character Pete Rafferty, played by actor Cy Kendall. Tim reveals that the guys who were murdered had recently won a lot of money and also happened to be with a gorgeous and mysterious blonde woman at the time. But realizing his life might be in danger, he reaches out to his friend, Michael Shayne, for help. Now, Tim has something going on with his boss's wife, the character Muriel, played by Sonia Sorrell. Probably not a good idea. And she shows up and sees that Tim has been beaten and his apartment has been searched. She thinks it might be the work of her jealous husband, but Tim says, no, it was a work of a local crime boss named Brenner. Tim, however, just happens to notice that Muriel is carrying a .32 automatic, and he starts to wonder if she might be involved in these crimes. Well, we cut over to Detective Michael Shayne in his office, played here by Hugh Beaumont, and he's in his office just chilling out and feeding peanuts to a monkey that has found his way into his office. Yeah, peanuts are that trademark of Beaumont's version of Shayne. It's a snack that he eats when he's solving crimes, and, hey, why not? But what's the deal with the monkey, and how did it get into his office? But whatever. He reads in the paper that his friend Tim has been hurt and is in the hospital. So he and his assistant, Phyllis, actress Catherine Adams, they hurry over to check on him. And when Shayne learns more about what is going on, he's on the case. Well, Mike sends Phyllis to go and talk to Bronson's secretary. Bronson is Tim's manager. And in the meantime, he heads over to Tim's apartment to investigate. And while there, he gets roughed up by two of Brenner's men who beat him up, thinking he might have some sort of affidavits they're looking for. But he's able to get away from them. Phyllis, meanwhile, finds a perfumed letter addressed to Tim with a phone number and an offer of information. Mike is able to determine that the number belongs to a Madge Rankin, but no one answers at her door. The neighbor, however, Helen Porter, played by Marjorie Hoschel, tells him that no one has been there for a few days, so Shayne breaks into Madge's place. This is the one who had offered information in the letter, and discovers that she's been killed. Now, police detective Rafferty, who doesn't really care much for Shayne, takes him in for questioning, and while there, Shayne learns that all of the victims had been shot with a .32, but none of the bullets had come from the same gun. Phyllis talks more with Helen, and around here, a character named Dillingham Smith arrives, played by actor Richard Frazier, and learns the news of Madge's murder, who was somebody that apparently he knew. But who is he? Well, Phyllis goes and picks up Shayne from the police station, and they head to see this Dillingham Smith character. And they learn from a doorman that Dillingham's wife is actually a beautiful blonde. So they trail him, but some thugs see what he's up to, and they take him for a little drive, and they still want some affidavits from him, apparently. Shayne makes a quick getaway, and this is probably the action highlight of the film right here. So Shayne makes his way back to town, and as he continues his investigation, and as we near the end of the film, and as more and more suspicious characters enter the story, can Michael Shayne unmask the culprits behind the crimes and solve the mystery of the Blonde for a Day? Well, no spoilers. I'll let you catch the exciting ending for yourself. So let me offer some closing thoughts about this one. Blonde for a Day was released in 1946. And I thought it was a good mystery with some fun dialogue and wit and humor. I enjoyed it, and I thought it was breezy enough that, it's only about an hour long. So it's got a pretty fair pace to it. And otherwise, it was a good entry into the Michael Shayne series featuring Hugh Beaumont. It was directed by Sam Newfield, who directed other films in the Michael Shayne series as well. in addition to numerous other PRC films. Newfield has a fascinating background in that he's considered to be among the most prolific directors in the history of American cinema, with an estimated, get this, 300 films, including everything from one-reel black and white training films to full-length features. And he did movies across numerous genres: science fiction, westerns, crimes, horror, comedy, and so on, over his 30-year career. In 1939, he went to work for PRC, where he's well known for his films, and it's said he would shoot movies in two styles: fast and faster. PRC budgets were generally low, with some budgets where he would only get $500 a picture. Wow. So he would generally finish them with very tight shooting schedules, sometimes even within a week. And having seen and reviewed a fair number of PRC films on my channel, I've seen his name quite a few times, and no doubt I'll see it more in the future. But what can I say? I enjoy his movies. And that's really something to say that you were involved with directing 300 films. So my thoughts on the film. Again, this was an enjoyable watch with a twisty plot, had some interesting red herrings, and I liked how the investigation was sort of split up between both Michael Shayne and Phyllis doing the legwork of the investigation together. There were plenty of interesting, shady characters to keep you guessing as the story unfolds. And if you enjoy 40s era crime mysteries, this one is worth watching. I know the production value isn't the greatest, but who cares? I'm really starting to love old PRC movies because they're like finding unexpected gems in the old Hollywood era. And I'm looking forward to the next two films in the Hugh Beaumont Michael Shayne series. Now, this was the third time for Hugh Beaumont to step into the role of Michael Shayne, following Lloyd Nolan, who was previously in the role when Fox produced the series. And as you obviously know, Hugh Beaumont would later become well known as the legendary Ward Cleaver father character in the TV sitcom Leave It to Beaver that ran from 1957 to 1963. I recently did a biography of the life of Hugh Beaumont. I find him a really fascinating actor, and I really liked how he played this particular detective character. Different than Lloyd Nolan did. Maybe a little more shady, a little more methodical with how he does things, but also maintaining that dry wit and sense of humor and so on. Now, Catherine Adams, who plays Shayne's assistant Phyllis in the film, was actually Hugh Beaumont's wife in real life. They had married in 1941, and she would retire from film in 1942 to raise a family of 2 sons and a daughter. And this would actually be her last film. And they stayed married for a long time, but divorced ultimately in 1974. Now, the character Phyllis was in the previous films, but was played by Cheryl Walker. So that was in the first of the 2 Hugh Beaumont Michael Shayne films. So, and just to kind of wrap things up, the film's working titles were Blondes on the Loose and Blonde on the Loose. Okay, and yes, blonde characters do occupy a good part of the story, but like usual, I find the movie posters for this one amusing. Michael Shayne falls for a blonde for a day. Well, not exactly, but whatever gets people in the theaters, I guess. Anyhow, Blonde for a Day may not be big budget noir, but it was an enjoyable Michael Shayne film from 1946. It's got a good story, some fun red herrings, a lot of charm to it, and I like the mystery that unfolds as you watch. If you're a fan of Hugh Beaumont or 40s era B-movie mysteries, this one's worth checking out.